The great katanas in Elden Ring are fantastic. They've got extremely long reach, devastating damage output, and are also just one of the most flashy weapons you can use, making you look like a total badass as you annihilate everything on your screen. And because we've already gone through builds for the great katana and Rakshas's great katana, today we are finalizing the dynamic trio by going over the best build for the Dragon Hunter's great katana. So let's just jump straight into it. Obviously today's video is going over a fantastic weapon once again, completing the catalogue of the great katana builds, and I must say the Dragon Hunter's katana is by far one of the coolest weapons in the entire game, because as you're seeing in the gameplay right now, it's got a very unique Ash of War where you literally throw an energy wave of draconic damage at your enemies' faces, and well, that's pretty damn cool if you ask me. On top of that though, it is still a katana, so it has fantastic heavy moves as well as a bunch of piercing attacks with its light attacks as well, which again reinforces my statement at the beginning of the video where great katanas are possibly one of the best weapon types. Oh, and it does bleed damage. But as much as I can keep glazing this weapon on and on, I should probably tell you where you even get this, and I'm sure those of you that have played the DLC have got this weapon, because the way that you obtain it is of course by going into the DLC and taking on the Dragon Man boss fight. Obviously if you're heading towards Bale, and head towards the Dragon Pit where you will actually be invaded by a different Dragon Man. This is not the one that drops the weapon, but when going through the cave you can then take the plunge down to the actual Dragon Man, and once you defeat him here in the Dragon Pit, you will then be rewarded handsomely with, like I say, one of the coolest weapons in the entire game. Now, as per usual, the gameplay that you're going to be seeing in the background is actually from New Game Plus 3. This was on an earlier character, and I am going to give you some different variations of the build, because in your later New Game Pluses, you might want to swap a few things out just so then you're not so squishy, because of course, we typically try to get the best damage out of this weapon, which in this case does involve making a few sacrifices to our defense. So like I say, if you're in like New Game Plus 5 and onwards, where most things start becoming one-shots, I will give you various options to stop that happening. But also, just before I show you all of that goodness, I do just want to make a note of like the stance damage and the type of damages that we're doing with this weapon, because it is a great katana, so it does have bleed. So if you're ever hitting physically with the weapon, which can happen during the Ash of War as well, you are then obviously going to be proccing the bleed build up as well. Just know great katanas obviously aren't as quick as regular katanas, so even though there is that bleed proc potentially happening there, I am not relying on that bleed proc because we can't buff it in any way. We can't infuse the weapon with blood flame or anything like that, so I heavily advise that you don't necessarily tailor a build into that and kind of take any bleed procs that happen as like an added bonus and purely focus on just doing the most damage you can with the physical weapon itself. But talking of physical damage, the Ash of War is a physical hitting move. Although you could argue it's basically a magic projectile, it's not. It's counted as physical damage, so maybe treat it similarly to the storm attacks. Obviously this doesn't get buffed by storm attacks, but obviously they're physical, so treat this in the same way. It's just pure physical damage, and when you're using the Ash of War you can actually hit with that like phantom blade-esque move, but you can also hit with the weapon itself. This will of course help with bleed procs as well as stance damage, because the phantom blade-esque projectile you're throwing at your enemies does do 16.5 points worth of stance damage, as does the weapon if you physically hit with it during the Ash of War 2, so you can do up to 33 stance damage with a fully charged Ash of War, because yes, it is chargeable. And then just for standard attacks, the charged heavy, so the charged R2s, when two-handing do 36.3 points of stance damage, and then jumping heavies also do 24.2. So it is a relatively decent stance breaking machine as well. You do want to throw in some light attacks here and there, because obviously not every single move is punishable with a full use of the Ash of War or a charged heavy, because like I said earlier, this weapon still is a little bit slow and does take a little while to charge up its moves. But with a mixture of jumping attacks, obviously charged heavies, and the full use of the Ash of War, you can still be breaking enemy stances really easily. But what I will say is you're more than likely going to defeat the enemies before that even happens, because again, as you're hopefully seeing throughout the gameplay in the background, this thing hits like a truck. And without wasting any more of your guys' time, here are all the stats and everything you need to make this build possible. Like I say, I will give you a few other options in a moment, but this is the final build that I had the most success with, which you can see has the following stats of 50 vigor, 14 mind, 24 endurance, 54 strength, 34 dexterity, 10 intelligence, 33 faith, and then 10 arcane. Again, those stats are possible by choosing the wretch as your starting class, but again, feel free to use the samurai if you are on a min-max, because essentially we don't need any arcane or intelligence. But as you can see, we're also using Godfrey's icon and the Shard of Alexander to boost our Ash of War specifically, but then we also got the Millicent's prosthesis because we are going to be using some light and heavy attacks here and there, as well as some jumping attacks, so you will be proccing Millicent's prosthesis fairly consistency, and it's also giving us a +5 to dexterity, actually giving us a significant boost to our AR, before then finishing with the two-handed talisman, which ties in with the 54 strength, because when we're two-handing the weapon, we get an extra 50% worth of our strength stats applied to our character, meaning that we actually have 81 strength when we're doing those light attacks and heavy attacks whilst wielding the weapon with both hands. So we hit the final soft cap with strength with this as well, and get the 15% extra damage by doing so from the talisman. And then in the Wonder Physick, I put the dexterity knot tier here, because then after this and Millicent's prosthesis, that boosts it up to 49, which is obviously again much closer to the strength stat as well, getting a nice split because this weapon is a quality weapon, getting the best out of both strength and dexterity, hence why we've gone sort of equal in terms of stats there, before then using the thorny crack tier as well, because again the idea is to try and kind of hit your enemies a couple of times. I know you're not really seeing me use that much in the gameplay, but for some enemies you do want to proc the successive damage output buffs from Millicent's prosthesis and the thorny crack tier to then go in and use the Ash of War with a heightened amount of damage, but it also helps with bleed build-ups as well. But even if you just want to spam the Ash of War like I'm basically doing in the gameplay, you're going to be doing thousands upon thousands of damage against everybody. And the one thing that I probably should have mentioned earlier in the video is that this weapon also deals additional damage to dragons. In fact, it does an extra 30% damage to regular dragons and 15% extra damage to ancient dragons, obviously making this again live up to its name of being a dragon hunter's main weapon, which of course makes this weapon fantastic for people like Bale, Fortisax, Placidusax, as you will be getting the extra damage from all attacks, including the Ash of War, with that passive buff. But just bringing it back to the build, if you want to do heightened damage, basically in the Wonder Physick, you can replace the Dex tier with the Blood Sucking Crack tier as well to give you an extra 20% damage across everything. Obviously, just be mindful of that, especially if you're in the later New Game Pluses, because we're also going to be running both Golden Vow and Howler Shibiri as our buffs, so we can use the Madness procs and get the extra damage through the helmet and of course the Age 1's Exaltation talismans for buffs as well. So if you want the best damage, also make sure that you proc Madness on yourself and use those items. But also the weapon uses a lot of stamina, so also feel free to replace one of the talismans or possibly again a Wonder Physick slot for a regenerative stamina buff like the Green Burst Crystal tier, or of course the 2 Turtle Head talisman to help with that stamina regain, because like I say, this weapon, especially the Ash of War, takes a lot of stamina per use. But no matter whether you add a little bit more extra stam recovery, add that extra damage in with the Blood Sucking tier, or just go with the base Dex and Thorny, or even Dex and Strength tier if you want, just to play it extra safe, you will have a fantastic great katana that has extreme reach, poking light attack for pierce damage, blood loss build up during the fight as well, and of course that killer Ash of War, which is just so fun to pull off and has incredible tracking, as well as being able to hit enemies in the head for even more damage, again against enemies like dragons. It's just outright ridiculous. Obviously, if you haven't used this weapon, please do yourself a favor and go and use it right now, because I can guarantee you you'll have an immense amount of fun with it. But with that said, that is the best Dragon Hunter's Great Katana build for you. It is really good to be back and making this type of content for you guys, because I know I said in the last video, but it's been a little while since we've been on this grind, so I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be using weapons that we still actually haven't made videos on, because yes, there's still a lot more to go through. So again, you can expect even more builds coming out thick and fast. I know Elden Ring isn't so popular as it used to be, but hey, we're having fun that's all that matters. So if you have had a fun time, or if this build has helped you out anyway, or you just enjoyed the video in general, if you don't mind me asking you just to do the YouTube thing of leaving a like rating down below, or leaving a dislike, and let me know what I got wrong, or how I can improve these videos, because I always welcome constructive criticism. So genuinely, if you did enjoy this video, let me know why in the comments, but also whilst you're down there, let me know what weapon you want to see me use next. I am taking suggestions. In fact, Sullivan Nelson, shout out to you, has given me the idea to do a crit build. So that will be something that I'll work on in the near future. So if you want to be featured in a video or have a shout out like that, like I say, get in the comments, let me know your thoughts and feelings. But other than that, also feel free to subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. We're growing our community every single day. We're getting closer and closer to that elusive 50k subscriber mark. So again, if you want to stay up to date with everything Elden Ring, everything Night Rain, and just be a part of the community, feel free to subscribe too. But now that I've said all of that, that is going to do it for this video, guys. So like I say, I hope you enjoyed. Go and have an absolute blast with this build. Let me know how you get on if you do happen to use it. But I guess for now, I will catch you in the next video of whatever it is that we make. Bye bye.